Hey all, welcome to another webinar, and there's a few thousand that signed up, so those of you who are tied in today, who got in, congratulations. It's a long queue, so good for you being early. My webcam is decided to not join us today. I don't know why, probably because Microsoft decided to update the computer, and probably in doing so, forgot to update something to do with my webcam. But I think we just got a Mac for me to use to tie in all my other research. So I can't believe I'm moving to Mac, living in Seattle. Bill Gates is going to have me hung out to dry. So can you guys see my screen? Just quickly say yes in the questions box. Yes, awesome. Okay, thank you. I wish my kids would respond that quickly. So just for fun, who is the furthest away from Seattle today? I am here in kind of overcast Kirkland, cold, Pennsylvania, New York City, Yakima, Spain, Singapore, Australia, Minneapolis, Kansas, Brisbane, Nashville, never been, want to, Saskatchewan, Maryland, Utah, Wollongong, Australia. That's definitely a name typical for Australia. BC, lovely. Bainbridge, excellent. I was over there not too long ago, Ingrid. Mexico, cool. Tri-Cities, man, that's probably burnt up in smoke. A lot going on over there. We had a lot of pollution from the forest fires here. So settle down now, I hope. Maine, sweet. It's always fun. I love technology and what it can do to bring us together. So thanks for sharing that. And I want to have this webinar for you guys today and gals because methylation is a huge topic, and I find that sometimes I get carried away in my conferences and I get too detailed. So I want to simplify things for you. So what I have done is I'm trying to do just that, and I've renamed some biochemical words because, well, you can do that when you're teaching, right? So let me show you quickly what I believe methylation is in terms of a cycle, but also what it really is all about. Because it's just a word, and it's a word that describes an action. And if you add shun to the end of anything, it's pretty much a reaction, right, of some sort. So this is my renamed words. Let me zoom this up a little bit. Okay. All right, so since you guys can see my screen, that's good. So what I want to show you is that methylation is this cycle here, and it's occurring basically in every single cell of your body. I don't know exactly how fast, but it's happening pretty darn quickly. And it's happening all the time. And since it's happening all the time in certain cells, not every cell, but in a lot of cells, it's happening. And especially in the cells that need repair or need things produced. And before I get there, I want to describe kind of what it is, an example here. Methylation is an action of where you take a single carbon with 3 hydrogens and it attaches to something. And when you attach a methyl group to something, that changes the shape and the function. And if you change the shape and function of that particular compound, then it has a different job. So I'm wearing now, well, nothing fancy, but if I'm at a conference, I'd be wearing a suit and tie, and my function would be looking professional, and I'd be giving a presentation. Now, I'd be changing my attire if I'm going to go out in the soccer field with my cleats and shin guards, shorts, and a t-shirt. Okay, so I have changed my function by changing what is on me. So the clothes in that situation for me was the methyl group. Now in the body, it's a carbon with 3 hydrogens. Now I want to show you an example of what methylation really does and what standard medicine is constantly measuring. So You go to the doctor and you say, look, I've got cardiovascular risk, and a lot of people in my family have died from cardiovascular risk, and I want to make sure I'm not going to have that issue. So your doctor runs a homocysteine. Your homocysteine comes back, say, at 26. And the doctor goes, that's pretty darn high. We need to lower your homocysteine. And what that requires methylation, because homocysteine requires methylation in order to be reduced and reused. So let's start with homocysteine, since you guys are all familiar with it. Here it is right here. In order for homocysteine to be transformed, it needs the methylfolate, which comes from your leafy greens, or the MTHFR enzyme in your body, which, as you know, many of us have it screwed up, including me. So you need methylfolate. You also need methylcobalamin, which comes from red meat or supplementation. If it comes from bacteria, that's fine, but it's not utilized by the body. So people who say that your bacteria are producing a lot of B12, that is true, they are, but it's producing a cobalamin that our body does not use, but it does show up in the blood test. So if you have elevated cobalamins in your blood test, it doesn't really mean that you have elevated methylcobalamins, it just means you have elevated cobalamins. And which one, you don't know. So it could be a false elevation of having an elevated cobalamin, and it could be bacteria producing it all. That actually, from what I heard, is a sign of SIBO. So elevated B12 levels, if you're not supplementing or eating red meat, could be bacteria overgrowth. A side note. So methylfolate, methylcobalamin, and zinc you need for homocysteine to come through here in order to put on a methyl group to the homocysteine, which now becomes methylated homocysteine, which is also called, in real biochemistry, methionine. Methionine you get from protein. When you eat protein of any type, there's methionine in it for the most part. So you consume protein, you get methionine, and it comes over here along with magnesium and ATP from mitochondria, and it makes your body's #1 methyl donor called S-adenosylmethionine, SAMe, which you can buy on the shelves these days. Some good, some not so good. So, and SAMe is very, very important. So SAMe, 80% of it goes to two things. 80% goes to two things. It makes creatine for your muscles, and it's also needed for your brain and neurological system, and goes for phosphatidylcholine, your cell membranes. So your muscles, your cell membranes, and your neurological health really demand a lot of creatine. And it's produced every day, all day, and 80% of your methylation cycle is going towards these two things. The rest of it goes towards getting rid of your dopamine, getting rid of your estrogens, producing your norepinephrines, producing your melatonins, helping produce your carnitine and your CoQ10s, and turning on and off your DNA, and so on. So it does a lot of other things as well, 200 other things. And after it does say it makes the SAMe, helps donate the methyl group to this enzyme, JMT, after it donates methyl group, it becomes S-adenosyl homocysteine, okay? Which then has to be transformed into homocysteine, which then needs to be methylated again to become methyl homocysteine. The methyl group falls off to make stuff. After the methyl group falls off, becomes homocysteine, needs to become remethylated, makes something else. Maybe it makes your cell membrane, phosphatidylcholine, then it becomes homocysteine again, needs more B12 and methylfolate, magnesium, comes around, makes SAMe. SAMe now needs to make some dopamine, because you're listening to this and your dopamine levels are going up. So now your body's making some more dopamine. After it does that, it makes homocysteine, comes back around, and now, as I said, its estrogen molecule comes in. SAMe donates a methyl group for that. Now COMT can work, and it can lower some of your estrogen, so your cancer risk goes down, comes around, becomes homocysteine, and so on. So it just goes on and on and on, around and around and around, and it depends on what's coming through. Whatever floats through and binds to an enzyme, that methyl group comes in and takes care of it. So I hope that kind of takes it up in a nutshell. And then what you should also know is 85% of methylation reactions occur in your liver. So, hey, Sam, good to see you, bud. Sam from Colorado. Glad you're tuning in. So a short route for homocysteine going to methionine, there's a shortcut, okay, right here. So homocysteine becoming to methionine can also get methylated if you eat some meat and some eggs. And also quinoa and beets are also good sources of choline. So if you're a vegan or vegetarian, you can get choline this way. So this is what I call a backup route, but you should keep in mind that homocysteine through this BHMT enzyme occurs mainly in the kidneys and liver, and the testicles if you're a man, and a few other minor organs, but don't tell those minor organs that they're minor because they might get irritated. But so this backup enzyme occurs here, and this pathway occurs everywhere. So let's say you're pregnant and you need to get some SAMe into the placenta, then you need to be focusing on the long route. So you're going to need some methylfolate and methylcobalamin and some zinc to deliver SAMe to the developing embryo. This pathway is also important because your internal levels of homocysteine yourself need to go down and be recycled, but we got to get it to the baby. So you need to have the long route, not the short route. And 85%, as I was saying earlier, Sam distracted me because he does that. So 85% of your methylation reactions occur in your liver. So if you go to your doctor and your liver enzymes are elevated, your AST, your GGT, your ALT, or you have some type of infection or a viral infection and you see that your liver enzymes are up, perhaps you're drinking alcohol, then your liver is working too hard. It's burdened, and you don't want that to happen. So if your liver enzymes are up, you need to be supporting your methylation and you need to be reviewing your lifestyle and dietary habits to reduce that burden. If you're drinking a lot of alcohol, you need to reduce, and you need to be supplementing or changing your diet to get some methylcobalamin and methylfolate and some choline, okay? So let's look at a picture here of what the difference is. Here's your homocysteine. You got carbon and 2 oxygens. You got this, and this, and this, and this, okay? And it goes through all this in order to become methionine, which is methylhomocysteine. And look at the only difference. CH3 is at the bottom, okay? And this H is also gone. But that's it. That's the only difference. So that's all is happening in methylation, is it goes through a bunch of enzymatic reactions using a bunch of nutrients for that to happen in order to attach this thing. And it's a big headache. It's very, very difficult to get this CH3 bound on the various things because you have to go through 1, 2, 3 enzymes or a fourth. Plus you need these nutrients available in order to do it. Plus you need to not have heavy metals, yeast overgrowth, drinking alcohol, lead, mercury amalgams, nitrous oxide from the dentist, other medications, antacids, which Susie Cohen is going to be talking about. What messes up the methylation cycle and other genetics at our ShyCon conference coming this October. So this is what I used to show people for a complicated, oops, messing around with my pen. This is what a more complicated picture of methylation looks like. So when I showed this to doctors and conferences, and I still do, they kind of look at me like deer in the headlights and I lose them. So that is why I make the more simplified version above. And for those asking if this is recorded, yes, this is recorded. Better be. I hit the record button. And if you want to get the recording later, you can go to signal.org and you can get the membership here. And if, as a member, you can watch all past webinars as well as future ones, and plus a bunch of other videos. So here is the homocysteine again, comes through with the methylfolate, the methylcobalamin, and the zinc, makes the methionine, turns into methionine, then makes your SAMe, dumps off the SAMe, comes back around, makes your homocysteine. Now this purple stuff slows your methylation down. It's not an inhibitor, which I have it over here. I'm changing that to say decrease activity, but these things slow your methylation down. So things like hydrogen peroxide, mercury, lead, nitric oxide, acetaldehyde, which comes from a lot of reactions in your body, aldehydes in general, but also from alcohol and yeast, i.e. candida. So a lot of us eat sugary foods or a lot of carbs, or we're taking antibiotics, and that predisposes you to increase yeast overgrowth. If you're stressed out, you're decreasing your stomach acid, which is then predisposing you to yeast overgrowth, and being stressed out predisposes you to eating the what kind of foods? The feel-good foods, which are sugary, which also predisposes to yeast overgrowth. So taking a test called the comprehensive digestive stool analysis to see if you have yeast overgrowth can be very, very effective. So you want to make sure you get rid of that stuff and heal the gut and change your diet. Changing your diet is not easy, but it is something that needs to be done. There's a video I've talked about in past webinars, but I want to show you because I know changing your diet is not hard. It's not easy. This video right here by Doug Lyle, TEDx, The Pleasure Trap, you got to watch that. He does a fantastic job. It's humorous, and he really gets into good details of why it is so hard to quit eating those sugary, addictive foods. And he explains it very, very well. And I'm not going to say anything more than that, but watch that. Take 17 minutes out of your life to extend your life by years. Not only that, but live healthier. Inflammation, TNF-alpha. So inflammation also slows your methylation cycle down. But look what speeds it up. Stress. Stress speeds up your methylation. So if you're stressed out, it speeds up your methylation. And you're thinking, well, that's great, right? Stress is speeding up my methylation. My cortisol is speeding it up, which is good. But think about it. If you're speeding in your car and you have a low tank of gas, you're about out, and the next exit's 30 miles ahead, you're going to be running out. So you don't want to be pushing too hard on the gas. You want to be just easing along at 50 miles an hour or 80 kilometers an hour if you're other parts of the world, because America is the only one in miles per hour. We dare to be different. Then you want to not be speeding. It's the same thing in your methylation cycle. If you're stressed out, you're going to be speeding up your methylation cycle, which is going to be using up your B12, which is going to be using up your methylfolate and your zinc and your magnesium, and your mitochondria are going to go overworked. And eventually, these nutrients are going to go down because when you're stressed out, either you're not going to eat, or you eat the wrong foods, or you stay up late because you can't sleep because you're stressed out, and then you're going to be using even more nutrients, and your body's not going to repair itself, which is going to require even more methylation to occur, which is going to make you more depleted in overall methylation and overall nutrients. So the best ways that I have continued to teach people and doctors all around the planet is to conserve your methylation by eating well, living well, having a healthy environment, decreasing your stress, going to bed on time. And even me, who used to be a big time night owl, I'd be going to bed at 2, 3 in the morning. Seriously, I'm now in the bed, eyes closed, sleeping by 10:30 to 11. And that is no joke. I'm very proud of myself. After I was reading the research about all the harms of not going to bed on time, I was like, I'm sitting here teaching this stuff. I'm going to change my own actions. And I tell you, my cognitive function has increased. My tolerance level, I have 3 boys, has increased. And my ability to wake up in the morning feeling rested at 7 o'clock is now not a problem. I can't believe it. So I'm really, really pleased about that. So go to sleep, calm your stress down. You can take adaptogens, adrenal supports, find good activities that you like to do. I love chasing balls. You get me a tennis ball, a basketball, a football, a soccer ball, and I'm totally content. So it's all good with that. So find something you enjoy, and your methylation will be also working well for you. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell for methylation. It does a lot of other things. It's connected to many, many other pathways. Helps make a lot of neurotransmitters, which I've addressed in multiple other conferences. Helps get rid of your estrogens, so you get rid of the nasty ones, so your risk for estrogen sensitive cancers goes down. But methylation is connected to this, and I'm currently working on, this is all changing as we speak. So this is moving over here, this is coming up here. I'm adding a whole bunch of secret stuff right here, and that secret stuff is going to be presented at our October conference. And I look forward to seeing you there, Sam and Susie, and hopefully a few other 100 of you guys. Hopefully some of you guys are on this call. So I'm really excited about it. I'm also very overwhelmed because I'm trying to solve all of human medical problems in one fell swoop. And that's not possible, but I try. So let's get to some questions. And I'm going to start at the top. First come, first serve. Tosca, I answered your question. Heavy metals, Maria, I answered yours. That was a good one. Let's see. Okay. Hi, I'm homozygous for 677, and I was taking Thorn Guard, and I was taking 2 in the morning and 1 at night. After a year, I had my levels checked, and my B12 was 1999. Twice the highest rating. What should I do? Do I need that amount of methylation as I am 60 and I went through menopause at 41? So, Beth, I would say that what you could do is you can stop taking this supplementation and see where your levels are. And I would probably wait, I would probably wait a month before rechecking. And seeing high B12 levels, we just talked about that. There's a few reasons for high B12. One, you're supplementing with a lot of B12. That's definitely a possibility of why it's high. And no, there's not too much risk of having high B12, except, I talked about this before, but so B12 is here. After it gets used up by going through this enzyme called methionine synthase, it becomes cobalamin. And then it becomes cobalamin 2, which then is kind of a radical, and it can kind of cause some havoc. So I think some of you guys who are taking B12 and say, I don't tolerate it because I'm COMT and I'm overmethylating, well, some of you probably aren't tolerating B12, as in methylcobalamin, because you're using it and it's turning into a free radical, and you don't have adequate methylation, i.e. SAMe or riboflavin or niacin, to convert that oxidized radical of cobalamin back into methylcobalamin. So you take the methylcobalamin and you turn it into a radical, and it needs this enzyme along with these nutrients to convert it back. So Beth, if you're taking a lot of B12 and you don't have this system working very well, and you don't have enough glutathione because hydrogen peroxide, which is H2O2, if you're not taking adequate glutathione, then that could be a problem. So I'd be making sure your glutathione is on board to neutralize the hydrogen peroxide. We do need some of it because that's what kills bugs in our system, along with other things. But having too much is not good. And keep in mind that when you're supplementing, there's a video, not a video, there's a podcast, CL.com. I've talked about this one in the past too. How much to take? So this is a great one, and you can skip to the, I don't know, the second minute or something. I get into my typical disclaimers, like, to cover my butt. But you get to the second minute mark, and it will give you a gauge of how much to take. But I would retest and see how you feel. Not see how you feel, but rather see what the levels are. You could also be having lead as you get older and you enter menopause. Your estrogen levels tend to go down, and as your estrogen levels tend to go down, then your bones get more brittle. As your bones get more brittle, they're leaching out more lead, especially you see this in women. So I would be checking your estrogen levels. I'd be checking your bone strength with the DEXA scan, and I'd be making sure you're getting adequate D and K and your trace minerals for your bones, and doing some impact sports and activities, because impact, banging with your bones, is what keeps them strong, and lifting some weights. But you can check your lead levels, you can check your red blood cell lead levels, and if it's elevated, then that's a problem. If it's not elevated, it could be hiding in your bones and causing a blockage. Because remember, if you have any of these things here, even if you're taking these in supplement forms of methylcobalamin and methylfolate and your zinc, and your homocysteine is still elevated even you're taking these things, it could be because you have blockages here. Okay, so you got to remove these blockages to free up your methylation cycle. You're welcome. I have a question about methotrexate. If I have a patient with homozygous SNP and an MTRR and MTHFR, will the drug work? What are the ramifications in the methylation pathway? If I support with a methyl assisting product, is that enough? So I would be first, it's a great question, Tanya, and I would first ask, is methotrexate what you need to be using? Do they have rheumatoid arthritis? You don't have to answer, I'm just spouting these off because I want to get to other people's questions. But if they have rheumatoid arthritis or autoimmune disease, or if they have cancer, I'm going to show you where the methotrexate blocks. Methotrexate blocks DHFR, and it blocks the upstream folate up here, which means if your patient is taking folic acid, that folic acid is not going to be able to come through here. It's going to hit a door, and the patient is not going to be able to get folinic acid or their methylfolate, which is then going to cause a lot of other problems. So if they're taking methotrexate, maybe that you want to be lowering their folates because they have cancer, and lowering methylation is important during cancer treatment. So if you support with a methyl assist product, you're going to be undoing the benefit of methotrexate. So I probably wouldn't be doing that until the cancer has been identified as gone, and then I would identify the methylation status in the patient and restore the methylation once the cancer treatment is finished. If it's during treatment, the MTRR and the 1298 MTHFR SNP are going to have a little effect, but I would say, especially the MTHFR variant, because it's going to slow it down by about 20%. But keep in mind that if your patient is riboflavin deficient or niacin deficient, or they have a lot of SAMe on board, or their DHA levels are low, or their thyroid isn't working, their MTHFR isn't going to be working very well anyway. So I'd be evaluating your patient's symptoms. If they're doing well on the methotrexate, then I'd leave it alone. You could check their platelets. If their platelets are low and they're bleeding, or their white blood cells are dropping, then they might want to give them some folinic acid, which is right here. But keep in mind that folinic acid can then feed through here and become 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate, drop down and make methylfolate, which then feeds in the methylation cycle. So, and it also makes the purine bases for the DNA. So it all depends on what's going on. But I would say in general, the drug will definitely work because it's upstream. Does regular digestion require methylation? Great question, Mike. And are there certain foods that have a higher methylation requirement to digest? I would say I don't think right away that methylation is required in order to digest your foods directly. Indirectly, yes, but I will say directly, I have not seen a connection between methylation, and I could be wrong here. I do know there are plenty of indirect effects with methylation and digestion, absolutely. Indirect affecting insulin levels and so on. But in terms of making your stomach acid, your pancreatic enzymes, your bile salts for fatty acid absorption, no, I don't see methylation being a requirement. But I will say that methylation is required to have a healthy liver, because 85% of your methylation reactions occur in your liver. And if your liver is not working very well, your ability to digest and absorb fats goes way down, and then you become fatty acid deficient, and your cell membranes are going to be suffering, and your vitamin A, D, E, and K levels are going to be dropping, so that will be a problem. And I also know that methylation is absolutely required to help renew your ever-changing cells in your digestive system. So in your stomach, you are burning holes all the time in the cells, and they are constantly dying, and they need to be replaced. That constant dying and replenishment requires methylation in high numbers. You also need methylation occurring in your small intestine and your colon in very high numbers. So if you have inflammatory bowel disorders or inflammatory bowel diseases of some sort, or you're celiac, or you've got atrophic gastritis, or you've got ulcers, then your methylation system is working harder because it's trying to make more cells and repair the system. And if you also have an infection in there, you're also burning through a lot of your methylation reaction. So indirectly, not much of an effect, but directly, not much of an effect, but indirectly, a massive effect. So if you're working with your doctor and you're killing the pathogens in your gut and you've changed your diet and you still are not healing, then even if you're taking things like glutamine or butyrate or other demulcents, then you probably need to be adding methylation to the picture. And I would also be looking at heavy metals and anything else that is blocking your methylation cycle. So for example, I had a friend of mine who had years of gut problems, and he finally figured out he had pathogens. He killed those, still had gut problems. So he changed his diet, he eliminated a lot of stuff, it improved, but still had problems. So then he brought in the methylation picture. He had some improvement, but not too much. And then he reduced his stress, and that helped. And then he identified that his heavy metals were through the roof. He started chelating, getting rid of the heavy metals, and then he added back the methylation and the gut healing products and kept the stress level down, and boom, his gut was healed. So it's not, you can't be going from one thing to another to another to another. You have to combine everything at once, which makes it, one, overwhelming as a patient. It can be costly because you need to hit it from all directions, but you actually need to be doing that. You can't just be chelating, you can't just be methylating, you can't just be changing your diet. You need to be doing all of them. James, you had a question about something about students. I don't know. Regarding folic acid and non-metabolized folic acid in a child with autism and constant problems and possible SIBO, what would be the best approach? I would say, first of all, that's a loaded question, but I would get rid of folic acid completely, all of you. Folic acid is not beneficial at all. If we need to get rid of it, it had its benefit for years and years, decades, but times have changed, and we have now turned the stone wheel into a rubber wheel, and also airplanes and trains and so on. So I look at folic acid, excuse me, I look at folic acid as the stone wheel, which got us going, but now we have things like folinic acid and methylfolate, which get us going, as in planes and trains. So you don't see stone wheels on cars anymore. You can put them on there if you want, but you're gonna look pretty funny, and you're not gonna get very well fast, and your gas mileage is probably going to go down. Durable, yes. But I get rid of the folic acid first, and I'd also be looking at getting rid of all dairy products, because dairy products mess up the folate receptors. You get antibodies against the folate receptors. Dr. Ed Quadros, I forget what university he's with, but he identified dairy products being contributors to having folate receptor antibodies, and these prevent folate from binding to the receptor. So, and so does folic acid. So get rid of folic acid because that binds preferentially to the folate receptor, and I'd be using things like folinic acid and methylfolate. But I'd be running a comprehensive digestive stool analysis first in the autistic child. I'd be looking at the environment, definitely. I'd be giving things that are safe to use, that are not going to be causing much problems, i.e. a little bit of phosphatidylcholine. I know some of you are pretty nervous about phosphatidylcholine, but you can use a little bit. If you're nervous with that, then you just do an egg. If they're intolerant to eggs, then use something like quinoa or beets. And I would also focus on creatine. Creatine is an excellent compound. Sorry, my littlest son is trying to come in here and probably ask me to go play with him, but now he's hopping back on one leg, wearing one shoe, because he was too lazy to put the second one on. So that's a beautiful thing with kids. But back to the autistic child. So I would look at a comprehensive digestive stool analysis, and I'd also be looking at a urinary organic acids test. I don't like poking and prodding these kids with blood right away. I want to earn their trust first. And I'd be looking at what food is coming in. I'd be looking at the environment he's sleeping in or she is sleeping in. Is there mold in the house? New mattresses, new paint? What's the stress level like in the home? These are really, really important points. But I'd be looking at all factors as much as possible, because a lot of things contribute to autism. There is not one gene. There is not one thing. It's just a myriad of things contributing to autism. And I'd absolutely be avoiding the dirty dozen. Go to Environmental Working Group, which is ewg.org. And you go there and you get the dirty dozen. Let me show you what that looks like. If autistic child is eating, this is a 2011, but it's pretty similar. Okay, so if your kids are eating apples, celery, strawberries, peaches, or patience, spinach, nectarines, grapes, and so on, these things are very, very high in pesticides. And elevated pesticides affect the mitochondria. And if they affect the mitochondria, you're going to have autistic spectrum disorders, absolutely. So you got to make sure that you are removing these environmental toxins. And you can buy these, not organic, because these are the cleanest. But keep in mind that things like pineapple are pretty high in histamine, and so are strawberries, and so is spinach. So high histamine foods I probably remove too. I also think the autistic spectrum is, I wouldn't want to call it overdiagnosed, because I don't think it is, but I don't like labeling anything as anything, because there are biochemical dysfunctions going on. And so a child who comes into your clinic with symptoms of autism, this child might have totally different causes in biochemistry and genetics and environment compared to the next patient that walks in with autism. So, but even though the symptoms are presenting the same, the underlying pathologies are different. So the mitochondria can be affected in one more than the other. Genes can be different. The foods can be different. The environment is different, and so on. So you got to be really doing a lot of environmental homework. That has made a big difference. I'd also look at ammonia levels and pathogens. There's a lot of pathogens now, a lot of superbugs. I look at history. If the child's been on a lot of antibiotics, I could spend the whole rest of the webinar on this one, but I got to move forward. Wish I could answer more. Let's go down here. Donna, how to address a CBS mutation? I laugh because I shouldn't laugh. It's not, I don't mean disrespect. It's just a very common question. And I did say that I will bring this up, and what I will do, I promise I will address CBS in the next webinar in depth. And what I will also show you is, for those of you who want to learn now heavily about CBS, I'll do it next webinar for free. But this conference here, part 1, there is a course outline. There it is, Unit 15. So you can get this, and as a general public or medical student, it's $95. As a health professional, it's $345, and for health professionals, I'm sorry, but that was the conference price, and you get CE credits still. So that's the beautiful thing with that. So you get CE credits, and I think it's it's 13 credits. But CBS is addressed here, and CBS is something that is overly blown up. And in past webinars, I have addressed it. I think it was in the first and second one I addressed some components. I will tell you that the CBS polymorphism is way overdone. It's not as significant as it's made out to be in the internet. There are many reasons why the CBS enzyme is being affected, and testosterone is one, and that slows it down. And that's interesting that testosterone slows us down because boys are more prone to autism, right? So, and men also die earlier than women. That's very unfortunate, but that's actually better for the planet because women are more beautiful anyway. So CBS, there's a lot of things going on here, and I don't want to get involved because I've spent a lot of time back in the past here on Unit 15. I think I spent a whole hour on it, and a lot of other past conferences too, and past webinars. I really got into sulfation. So, but I will say that it's nothing to really concern yourself with in terms of looking at it in the genetics. Now, looking at it phenotypically and environmentally and what's going on with your entire makeup, yes, we need to be looking at it. But if you have a CBS 699 polymorphism, yes, you need to be concerned with it. But in the grand scheme of things, it's minor compared to the rest of the biochemistry of how it's affecting it. May we access a copy of the methyl pathway chart, please? At seekinghealth.org, gift. If you go here, you can get a pathway planner, a simplified one. So you go here and you get a pathway planner download. That is the easiest way for us to get it to you guys. We actually offer the more complicated ones that I'm using here for sale for download. If you'd like to get those, doctors also put these big ones like this on their wall. So when a patient comes in, patient has MTR, MTHFR, they've got adenosylcobalamin deficiency, they have elevated homocysteine, they have low iron, and they have a magnesium zinc deficiency, and they have low glutathione. They can quickly see what's going on with their biochemistry, and it was very helpful for them. So doctors put that on the wall, so you can get it that way. Please tell him if he makes his presentation full screen, it'll be full screen on mine. You guys can't see this full screen? You should be able to see it. Well, should be. Let's see your questions here. Yeah, thanks, Jen. Recommendations for doctors in Seattle. methylation and sex hormones. Amy, I would go to the directory on seekinghealth.org, and you go to the directory at seekinghealth.org, and there are a bunch of doctors here that you can find. Click the disclaimer and you can look through here. And we're adding new ones all the time. And if you can't find one here, you can try Dr. Paul Anderson of Anderson Associates. He's quite well versed, and if he's too busy, he can refer one to you, and that would be a good start. Thanks for letting me know about the screen. When am I coming to Australia? When it's your summer and my winter. I was invited to go down there in beautiful July weather here in Seattle, and it was horrible, stormy weather down there. So I'm not going to fly for 20 hours to be cold when I can be warm up here. But I absolutely want to get down there. Australia, New Zealand are some of my top favorite countries. I mean, come on. My first boy's son is named Tasman, and you wonder where that came from, right? Tasmania and New Zealand and Abel Tasman. So I have a huge love and respect for your beautiful South Pacific. So I'll be coming down there, and I'll be hitting probably 5 cities or more in Australia, and I'll be hitting a few on lovely New Zealand as well. Probably make a couple-month trip out of it. So work and play. And I don't want to leave Perth and Tasmania forgotten as well. Okay. Do I have a general public price for the SHI conference? Patricia, I don't. Unfortunately, if we invited the public to the conference, we would not have any seats left for the doctors. But I will say that we are going to be having a all public access conference in the future, where in person you guys can come to the conference, and I will give some very good information for you that's not too overwhelming and very actionable. Basically how to find a doctor, how to work with your doctor, basics that you can do before you go to your doctor, and so on. So I'll be having that conference as soon as I'm done with this crazy ShyCon one, because I'm trying to reinvent the medical wheel. It's taking a lot of my time. Let's see. Would a paleo diet be the best approach for someone with MTHFR defects? So, Carla, that is exactly what I'm presenting this October at ShyCon. I'm presenting basically food. So look at this slide talking about paleo, and look at this. Look at this slide. I mean, this is what I was working on today prior to this webinar. So paleo diet is great, but it's great for some, awful for others, and not so impactful on others. So it all depends, and it all depends on what's going on in your life and how much repair that you need and so on. But if you're eating paleo or GAPS and you're doing fine in the beginning and you start doing worse, your nitrogen ratios can be off. Your nitrogen balance is off. And if your nitrogen balance is off, look, nitrogen, you're eating a lot of protein, your amino acids coming here, you're making a lot of ammonia. That ammonia is coming through here, and it needs, what I'm working on now is these empty slides. I'm drawing it all out. I'd show you, but my webcam isn't working. But this ammonia needs to be cleared out, and urea cycle can get overwhelmed, and uric acid is another tertiary pathway for ammonia elimination. So GAPS diet, it can be very great. It can be excellent. And Chris Kresser has done a lot of great work with this, a lot of work in paleo from other people as well. But I just want to caution you guys that if your biochemistry is not working and you're not taking adequate care in the balance of the food that you're eating, it could be really, really, really problematic, because if your ammonia builds up, then your glutamate increases, and if your glutamate increases, then you become a pissed off insomniac who is no fun to be around, and then you become labeled as autistic and just a punk, and then you start gravitating towards other foods because you don't like being labeled as an insomniac punk, and it's all because you're eating too much protein and releasing too much glutamate and ammonia. So these things are important to know. It's all about balance. But for someone who has MTHFR, I would be very, very careful in terms of reading set things that you need to be doing. MTHFR is one gene in the human body. I've made that mistake in the very beginning. So you can see all these things I'm working on here. I was going to show you. So mthfr.net. So everybody wants a protocol because it's easy, but there is no protocol. So I updated this mid-March, and you can see what a part 1 is. So part 1 is basically lifestyle and environmental changes, okay? So that's what you mainly do. I'm a huge proponent of that, and I cannot tell you how impactful that is. It sounds stupid, I know, to a lot of you, to go to bed on time and to reduce your stress and to eat right and to go outside and walk in nature and to calm down and do things that you love. But man, I'm telling you, these things make a difference, make a difference. So I saw one lady said, help, we've got elevated ammonia, been GAPS for 3 years. GAPS diet is very, very high protein, as I understand, and that excess amount of protein has to go somewhere, and that excess amount of protein goes to ammonia. So I would be getting off of GAPS, transitioning it with a nutritionist or a holistic doctor of some sort, or a team of them, and I would be also supporting with probably acetyl L-carnitine, probably some, what else? Mitochondrial support is very, very important. So elevated ammonia is a lot of reasons. And again, this is where my October conference is focusing with food and mitochondria. But where does ammonia get metabolized? Let me show you. Come on. Come on. I'm close. Here we go. Mitochondria. Okay. So if the mitochondria are not functioning well, and they're usually not functioning well in autistic children or anyone with chronic disease, then the ammonia is not going to be metabolized into urea. So the ammonia comes in here and it gets processed and kicked out into urea. If that's not happening, then you're going to have elevated ammonia levels. And I'm working on right now a pathway, various pathways to get ammonia out. I'd also check uric acid levels in the kid or the individual with elevated ammonia. You'll probably see elevated uric acid levels as well. So I would probably move to a modified ketogenic diet, and I'm also bringing that up this October as well, of how to do that, because a ketogenic diet is pretty extreme. A modified ketogenic diet is a lot more useful. And basically, in a nutshell, a modified ketogenic diet is pretty much a protein, a little bit of carbs and fat for breakfast. And then at lunch, it's basically a lot of fat with a little bit of protein, not much. And then dinner is basically salad, probably with some more fat. And you got to get your carbs in the evening as well to help support your dopamine. And that's pretty much a modified ketogenic diet. So very little carbs, moderate amount of protein, not too much, and a lot of fat. And you have to make sure that your patient's bile and liver are doing well, that there's not certain genetic polymorphisms that prevent them from doing this, and their gallbladder is functioning. Ketogenic diet is fantastic. I'm all for it. My client is heterozygous 677 and cannot tolerate even the smallest dose of methylated Bs without suffering from headaches or dizziness. Can you explain why that is? Diana, that's a great question. There are a lot of reasons for it. On this page here, I would go to this article, Preventing Methylfolate Side Effects, and there's a lot of good that you can do here. Because what happens is patients get diagnosed with MTHFR, and the first thing they put on is methylfolate, and that's wrong. That's what I used to do, and I realized that there's a lot of other genes in the body, and there's a lot of other environmental things going on, and we need to be careful with that. So read this article, and this will really help. So electrolytes are very, very important. Got to do that, and glutathione and basic other downstream nutrients. But let me show you, where is it? Too many screens. Okay, so here's MTHFR, diagnosed 677 in the patient. MTHFR makes methylfolate. They were given methylfolate or additional methylfolate vitamins, and it spins off in here and it does a bunch of this, okay? And then it ties in with all this. So in short, it can do a lot of different things of what's happening, and I'm continually trying to figure out all the different scenarios with this. Niacin deficiency is a big one that I'm finding. So giving 50 milligrams of niacin can really help for various reasons. One is because of bone marrow is depleted very quickly in niacin, and if you're giving methyl donors, then you're increasing red blood cell production, white blood cell production, and platelets. And these are on the bone marrow, and the niacin levels are going to be dropping. So, and if they're dropping too low, the DNA damage isn't going to be sensed, and then you're going to be making these more DNA damage, which is going to trigger oxidative stress and more damage and cause a problem. And part of that problem is headaches. And I will tell you too, dehydration is very common. So you got to make sure people are hydrated. Am I seeing any links with autoimmune disease and methylation? Absolutely, absolutely. If your immune system is not up to speed, then you're going to be having autoimmune disorders. If your gut isn't healed because of lack of methylation healing the gut lining, then you get leaky gut, which gets protein into your blood system and your interstitial space, which is going to upregulate your immune system, which is going to be attacking the self. If you're, that's just two. There was another one that just blew out of my head. I've developed alopecia universalis out of nowhere. Amalgams were removed, bought a sauna for detoxing. Just curious how methylation may be playing into autoimmune dysfunctions. So I'd be ordering a hormone panel, Cynthia, from your doctor. I like Precision Hormones. I have no affiliation with them. I just think they do a great job. Precision Hormones have a very good comprehensive urinalysis, urine hormone test. Be looking at that. I'd be curious to see if you had your amalgams removed properly. If they're removed improperly, then that flood of mercury got into your system, which then can cause a lot of other problems such as nutrient deficiency, which might be causing the alopecia. But I'd be looking at your hormones for sure. And I'd be looking at your heavy metals as well, since you had your amalgams removed. So you can do the unprovoked and provoked heavy metal urinary test. Doctor's data has that available. And you got to work with a doctor on that. That's something you definitely have to work with a doctor with. If their gallbladder is removed regarding the ketogenic diet, you just take things like ox bile, bile salts, taurine, and things like short chain fatty acids or medium chain triglycerides, MCT oils. I did not know this, but you don't need bile to absorb MCT oil, and you don't need bile to absorb short chain fatty acids either. So you need bile to break down the long chain fatty acids. So if you do a ketogenic diet, you can be supporting yourself with MCT oil and short chain fatty acids. Those are mainly, well, kind of carbohydrate based, but so MCT oil can bypass it. I put MCT oil in my smoothie every morning. So I make a smoothie every morning with optimal prenatal protein powder. I'm trying to be the first man to conceive a child myself, and it's not working. So I failed in that formulation. But every morning I make the prenatal protein powder because it's comprehensive in nutrients, and then I add the MCT oil in it along with some almond milk, and that's my breakfast along with some frozen berries, and berries are always organic, and that's my breakfast. And I have no gallbladder problems at all with that. But I would be supporting their liver. Again, I would be looking at milk thistle, ox bile, and things like taurine and glycine. One thing you should know about the bile is when they're, especially people who have no bile and the bile is just, or no gallbladder and it's just leaking out, dripping into the small intestine, these bile acids can become secondary bile acids, and these secondary bile acids can be very, very toxic and really hurt the mitochondria. And these secondary bile acids become a problem, especially, well, anyone who has bile, which is all of us, even those without a gallbladder. So if you have certain types of bacteria, these bile acids transform into secondary bile acids, which are toxic, very toxic. So you got to make sure you have the right bacteria in your gut, and you got to make sure that your body is moving these secondary bile acids out of your system. So if that's not happening, then every time you eat fat, you're dumping these bile acids into your stomach and you feel like crap. It could be because these bacteria in your gut are transforming the bile acids into secondary bile acids and wreaking havoc and then really negatively affecting your mitochondria. If you want to learn more about that, you come to ShyCon 15 if you're a health professional, and I don't know what it takes to get people to come to this place. Yeah, we've got hundreds signing up, but I want 2,000 doctors. I want thousands of doctors coming to these conferences because there's millions of patients around the world that need you, and we are presenting very unique information. So registration is at seekinghealth.org, and it's here at this page. You can come here, click conference and the registration, and financial scholarship. So if you can't afford it, the $12.95, you choose $8.95, and I will pay the difference via scholarship. And graduate students and first years can get it for half price, basically, which because I want to encourage students. And if you want to get a 1 day or 2 or 3 day pass, maybe you want to just come watch Susie Cohen present on drug interactions and methylation pathway, and watch Sam throw tomatoes at her, then you can choose the 1 day pass. If you want the full package and watch what tricks I've got up my sleeve for mitochondrial dysfunction, then you get the full pass. And I'm very, very excited about it. I'm very overwhelmed with the data I'm collecting. It's fascinating. I'm just trying to make it flow into a story, and that story is right here. And I'm very excited about it. I mean, food intake, I mean, it comes in and it does these things, and then it goes and does more things. And look, you got pesticides in your foods. And look, carbamate pesticides are pretty common, and they disrupt an enzyme that regulates acetylcholine. Well, the enzyme effects are usually reversible, but never mind that, well, they're pretty toxic on your mitochondria. Oh, and they contribute to ADHD. It's the most common neurobehavioral disorder, and epidemiologic levels show that children aged 6 to 15 with detectable levels of pyrethroid metabolites in their urine were more than twice as likely to be diagnosed with ADD. Where do they come from? The dirty dozen. So this conference is very scientific, but is very applicable. It gets you the data that you need as parents and as health professionals, and it's all here. And then if you have difficulty healing, then might be you're not getting enough protein. Maybe your energy stores are not working because your mitochondria aren't working up to speed. And why aren't your mitochondria working? Well, there's many reasons for that. And did you know that your bacteria, the amounts of some of these water-soluble vitamins, i.e. biotin and vitamin B6, found in the fecal matter are similar to or greater than the amounts ingested in the diet? So intestinal bacteria can make more nutrients in the digestive tract than you're eating or supplementing with. So, and you wonder why your B2 or your B3 or your B6 or your B12 levels are elevated? Could be because of bugs. So it's really cool. So anyway, there's a lot of other questions. I'm going to be keeping track of these questions. Let's see if I can answer another one here for you guys. What do I do with methylfolates producing moderate to severe anxiety and OCD? I stop it, Diana. I stop using it. Methylfolates is very, very strong nutrient, and I stop prescribing it, and I give niacin 50 milligrams. And imagine a bell-shaped curve. So if this is the patient off of methylfolate, and you give them methylfolate, and they become OCD and crazy, then you stop the methylfolate and you give niacin, and then they come back down, and then you say, okay, now they're kind of in a stupor and they're not doing very well, so now you give them more methylfolate and they feel pretty good. So say right here is the ideal spot for them. They keep taking the methylfolate, they come back up here. Now you said the niacin was really good last time, so you gave triple the dose. Now you're over here. Now you push them to this side and you don't know really what to do. So now you're in no man's land. So then you kind of wait till they fall back to where they were, and then you can give methylfolate again to spike them back up. So health is very, very dynamic, and you need to treat it as such. A lot of doctors will tell you to follow the GAPS diets, take this B12 shot 3 times a week, and take this probiotic and multivitamin and fish oil, and I'll see you in 3 to 6 months. Well, that 3 to 6 months of your life, every day is a different day. You're sleeping differently, eating differently, exposed to things differently, and it's not right. You cannot give a blanket statement of recommendations like that, and I'm trying to undo that because it's not accurate and it's really affecting people. So if somebody was doing really well on methylfolate and they developed OCD and anxiety, then you stop it and their OCD and anxiety will most likely go away if it was beneficial for them before. So you stop it, you give 50 milligrams of niacin about every 30 minutes, and it should go away. And you just give the methylfolate on an as-needed basis. Will my October conference be recorded and available for purchase online afterwards? Most likely, it will be. Most likely. Let's see. Have you heard that thallium has a huge effect on the mitochondria? Christine, I have not looked at that. I don't know. Bacterial B12 was said to be unhelpful earlier, but mention of B vitamins from gut bacteria is mentioned. Is B12 one of the B vitamins made by the gut? Is it not a useful form? Robert, great question. B12 made by bacteria in the gut so far, as my knowledge shows, that B12, the cobalamins made by the gut bacteria, is not useful for human biochemistry. But that water-soluble vitamin paper is new to me. And I'm seeing a lot of elevated B6. Doctors are coming to me all the time and saying, hey, my patients are elevated in B6. What's going on? So I'm wondering, because this paper is showing it here, pyridoxine, which is vitamin B6. So I'm wondering if some of these gut bacteria are producing it. And the microbiome is something that we're learning more and more about all the time. So I don't know if this is a readily available B6 for the human biochemistry or the biotin, or is it just useful for the microbes? But I would say that the microbes are beneficial organisms, have been with us for a long time. So I do think some of the nutrients that they make, I know some of these bacteria are producing butyrates for our large intestine, which we need all the time. I know some are making glutathione. Some are making lactate, some are making histamine, and these are all very useful for us. Some are regulating our immune cells, so it's pretty important. I've done well to skip B6 myself. No more multis for me. Exactly, Robert. Exactly. I found that I can't take a multivitamin every day. When I have my protein smoothie, there are some days where I don't want it. Or maybe I don't want it first thing in the morning, but I'll take it later in the day when after I'm working for a long time or I go exercise, then I might feel like I need it. If I go on vacation, I don't supplement typically. Let's see. Thanks for an informative webinar. You're welcome, Marielle. Do you find NAD useful supplement for those with MTHFR mutations? Oh, Cynthia, you're on a roll. You got a lot of questions. NAD is a fantastic compound, but let me show you this. Okay, so again, these are some of my slides from October, or for the October conference. If you have an elevated NADH to NAD ratio, you've got problems, big problems. So if you're taking NADH and you do really well, and then you say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna take another one, and you feel like crap, you've just caused yourself some pseudohypoxia. So that is a problem. And let me show you another slide. Look what happens to your glutathione when you're hypoxic. It's gone. It's gone. So it just drops. Well, let's see, where is it? Yeah, right here. It's hurting. So, and then, yeah, I don't have time to explain that. Trying to find you this one page here, but I will say that NADH is a great compound, but taking too much of it is not, because it causes oxidative stress and it really affects your mitochondria. So yeah, see, we get into science too. I don't just tell you about food. I'm a dentist trained in another country. Can I go to the conference? Adriana, please. Yes, absolutely. Health professionals of all types can go to the conference, absolutely. So just go to seekingehealth.org and register there. We've got people coming in from South Africa, Europe, Australia, Korea, Japan, Canada, our neighbor who makes fun of us all the time. So absolutely, come on down. And I've done presentation for biological dentistry as well, and that's at seekingehealth.org. Okay, guys, I gotta go coach my son's soccer here. One more. How do you increase glutathione levels if you've tried to open? I lost it. You guys are asking so many questions. Hey, Aaron, you're pumped for the conference. Yeah, me too, man. Joe, you're welcome, Adriana. Oh, Simone, or Simon, I think it's Simone Christoph. I used to be a runner, but I had to stop because I started to itch after just 5 minutes of running. Could this be related to MTHFR mutation? Love this question. And I love this question because I can answer it and I can look smart. So read this. Read this article. Okay? So Simone, you're still here. Hopefully you're paying attention and not watching some movie, checking your email. But this is for you. Read this article. If you're getting itchy, it could be histamine. When you exercise, you can get itchy. So, and there is a video. Let me show you where on this as well. So I'd like you guys to also see this YouTube stuff here. So at seeingout.org, we have a YouTube channel right here. What causes exercise-induced asthma? So go ahead and watch this, Simone, and I think this will answer a lot of your questions. There are a lot of other things going on as well with that. And let's see, histamine. There's another video. This one. Identifying MTHFR is important, but you can't just run around and say, oh, I'm depressed because I did. So that was a bad hair day for me, but never mind. This video also has a lot of good information, and 30 people liked it. Nobody hated it so far. So that's pretty good. But go here and I talk about exercise and what can do. So if you missed it, don't worry about it. Go to seeingout.org, go to products, click membership, sign up. It's $120 a year for general public, $25 for students, and $300 for health professionals. You get 14 hours of videos, 5% off of online courses, i.e. part 1 and part 2, discounts on conferences. You get all the webinar recordings, and if you're a health professional, you also get listed in the directory. After you're trained, we don't list you in the directory for people unless you have some training, because we don't want to refer people who don't have the training, because then it leads to a bad outcome for everybody. Okay, so I hope that helps you guys, and I look forward to seeing you guys in a month, and we will be talking about the infamous CBS enzyme. But in the meantime, if you want to focus on CBS now, because it's such a hot topic, go to seeingout.org, click products, go to courses, click part 1, and skip to section. I don't know if you can skip because I made it cumulative. That was also another bad hair day. My goodness, a lot of those. Unit 15, right there. And I get in a lot of detail, and I talk about sulfation as well. And sulfation, I also get into here. I think I talk about sulfation. Can't remember. It's been a while. Let's see. Nope, it's part 1. Oh, no, here it is, Unit 30. Unit 30, I get into sulfation again. And the previous webinar for the general public, I really talked about sulfur as well. So if you want to go and hear about sulfur, it's in there as well. Okay, so thank you. I'm off to teach some 10-year-old kids how to run around in sand and kick soccer balls. And I'm happy to say last time I was in Denver, I think it was last October I was in Denver, and my 10-year-old son, my 10-year-old soccer team, which I was coaching, was undefeated. So let's see if we can do it again. So I will see you guys next month, and we'll talk about CBS. And thanks again. Thanks for being here.